I'm Peter Dillard, 42 years old. For 7 years, I kept the wheels turning as operations manager at Helix Dynamics, a mid-sized tech company in Cincinnati. I wasn't flashy. I didn't care about office politics or chasing the next title. My thing was simple: get results, keep the team steady, solve problems before they exploded. That's what I did day in and day out. I had a good crew too, people who respected me because I treated them right. We hit deadlines, crushed targets, made things work. I didn't need applause, just a sense of purpose. For 7 years, Helix gave me that. Then Trent Lawson arrived. He was 39, fresh off some consulting gig, and the board brought him in to modernize things. Right away, it was obvious. He didn't care how anything worked. He just wanted people to fall in line. Loud meetings, aggressive emails, public call-outs. That was his game. He thrived on fear, not respect. I wasn't scared of him, and I guess that put a target on my back. At first, it was little things. Snide comments in meetings, rolling his eyes when I showed data, cutting me off mid-sentence with that smug grin. I stayed cool. I figured guys like Trent always burn out or bail. Turns out, I misjudged him. 3 months after he started, we had our big monthly leadership meeting. 15 of us in the main conference room. I was updating everyone on a logistics overhaul. The numbers looked good. Everything was working. Then, right in the middle of my presentation, Trent stands up. "Peter, can I stop you right there?" I paused. "Sure." He sauntered to the front, hands in his pockets, not even looking at me. "I've been thinking," he said. "This company needs a new direction. We need people who get where we're going, not where we've been." I knew what he meant. The room went dead quiet. "Your time here is done, Peter. Effective immediately. No warning, no private chat. Just a public gut punch dressed up as corporate speak." I didn't blow up or plead my case. I just stared at him for a moment, then looked around the table. Some folks looked stunned. Some just dropped their eyes. Nobody said anything. I closed my laptop, grabbed my stuff, and stood up. "Understood," I said. Then I walked out. If you're into stories about cold revenge or wild plot twists, stick around and hit subscribe. There's a new story here every day, each one crazier than the last. Anyway, while I packed up my desk, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I'd learned. 7 years of loyalty meant nothing to people like Trent. Doesn't matter how good you are or what you deliver. If you don't play their game, you're out. I left Helix that December afternoon, carrying a box of my stuff and zero illusions about corporate life. But I walked out with something else too. A quiet promise to myself, never to depend on anyone else's approval again. The next few months weren't pretty. I sent out dozens of job applications, landed a few interviews, nothing stuck. In this business, word gets around fast. When you get fired in front of a crowd, folks assume it's your fault. They don't ask questions, they just move on. My savings started to shrink. I cut every expense I could, cancelled streaming services, saved about $15 a pop, stopped eating out, saved around $400 a month, drove less, stretched every dollar. I didn't panic, but the runway was getting short. One night in late February 2024, after another rejection, I drove to the corner store for groceries. On my way out, I passed the lottery counter. I'd played Powerball before, maybe once or twice a year, never won more than a few bucks. On a whim, I bought a ticket for $2. Didn't think twice. 2 weeks later, I was on my couch scrolling through job boards and remembered the ticket. Pulled up the Powerball website, checked the numbers against my ticket. All 6 matched. I just stared. Then looked again. 68 million. After taxes. I didn't jump up or scream. I just sat there, letting it hit me. Then I made a call. Nobody was going to know. The next morning, I called up a law firm that handles lottery winners. They walked me through what to do next. Everything I did was about staying invisible. Anonymous claims, layered trusts, asset protection. All of it designed to keep my name out of the press. Within a month, the money was locked down and I basically disappeared. No social media, no interviews, no parties. I'd already nuked my Facebook months ago, stopped picking up the phone when old co-workers called, and dove into something new. Not how to spend the money, but how to make it last. I didn't care about flashy toys, yachts, mansions, whatever. I wanted control. I wanted freedom. I never wanted to answer to anyone again. While I studied investment strategies and all the ways to protect assets, I kept circling back to the same question. I couldn't stop thinking about Helix Dynamics. I'd spent 7 years there. It was the one company I knew inside and out. So I started digging. For weeks, I obsessed over every scrap I could find. Financial filings, industry news, LinkedIn updates, earnings calls. I needed to know what was really happening at Helix without me. Turns out, I didn't have to look hard. It was a mess. 6 months after I left, 2 of our biggest clients had walked. One complained about operational inconsistencies. The other just said they were exploring alternatives. Translation: everything was falling apart. Trent, the guy they put in charge, made big loud moves. He slashed costs, laid off teams that actually mattered, shuffled people around for no good reason, and swapped out veterans for cheap, clueless hires. Sure, it looked bold on paper. In real life, chaos. Helix is private, so you won't find everything in a press release. But enough leaked out. Vendor reports, gossip on forums, whispers from people still inside. Revenue tanked. Investors got spooked. Some even started talking about selling or merging. I kept digging. The board was on edge. Trent promised growth, but delivered a slow bleed. He talked about efficiency. What we got was turnover. People I'd worked alongside for years were leaving, taking everything they knew with them. Helix was bleeding out, plain and simple. And here's what hit me. The company itself wasn't broken. The foundation was solid. Clients hadn't really left. They just went quiet. The tech was still sharp. What Helix needed wasn't some wild reinvention. It needed someone steady. Someone who understood how to run the place without trashing everything that worked. Someone like me. That's when the idea started to take shape. Not revenge, not some petty comeback. Something bigger. I called a boutique investment firm in Chicago. They specialize in scooping up companies in trouble. I laid out the situation, said I had the capital and wanted to buy a controlling stake in Helix. I never mentioned my history there, just pitched it as a smart opportunity. They ran their own numbers and came back to me with a plan. If I put up 40 million, they could raise the rest with leveraged financing and grab 70% of the company. That would give me control. Real control, with a seat on the board. Even more important, I could overhaul the leadership. I agreed. The next 4 months were a blur. Lawyers, intermediaries, endless audits, negotiating with shareholders. Everything moved through shell companies and legal reps. My name was nowhere, just the way I wanted it. As far as anyone inside Helix knew, some anonymous investor group was sniffing around. The shareholders were desperate. Their equity had been tanking for over a year, so even a small premium looked like a lifeline. The deal moved fast. We closed in early September 2024. 70% of Helix transferred to a holding company I controlled. The official press release was pure corporate fluff. Helix Dynamics welcomes new investment partnership to drive growth and operational excellence. Nobody had a clue I was behind it. Not yet. If you're into this story, hit like. It helps the channel more than you realize. I waited 2 weeks. Let everyone stew. Let the rumors fly. Then I made my move. Late September 2024, Tuesday morning, I walked through Helix's front doors for the first time in almost a year. No announcement, no drama. I just walked in like I belonged. Because now I did. I owned the place. The receptionist didn't recognize me at first. Then she went pale. "Mr. Dillard." "Hey, Rachel," I said, keeping it casual. "I'm here for the leadership meeting." She fumbled with her calendar, said I wasn't on the schedule. I just smiled. "I'm on the schedule." I took the elevator up to the 4th floor, straight to the executive conference room. The board and senior leadership were already there, waiting for the monthly strategy review. Same room, same setup, just like the day Trent fired me 10 months ago. When I walked in, the whole place went quiet. Every head turned my way. At first, they looked confused. Then it clicked, and suddenly everyone was just staring. Trent sat at the head of the table. I watched his face go from puzzled to furious in 2 seconds flat. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snapped. I didn't flinch, just walked to the empty seat at the far end and set down my briefcase. "I'm here as the new chairman of the board," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I represent the majority shareholder." That did it. The room exploded. People started talking over each other, throwing out questions. Trent jumped up, face red and fists clenched. "This is a joke," he said. "Sit down, Trent," I told him. My voice was calm, almost bored. "You'll want to hear this." Harold, one of the older board members, leaned forward. "Peter, is this true?" I slid a folder across the table. Inside, acquisition documents, ownership transfer papers, a letter from the law firm confirming everything. Harold scanned the papers, then looked at Trent, then back at me. "It's legitimate," he said quietly. Trent stayed standing, gripping the table. "You can't do this." "I already did," I said. "Now sit down. We have business to discuss." He didn't. He just stood there, breathing hard, trying to catch up to what was happening. I opened my briefcase again and pulled out another document, a termination letter this time. Trent Lawson, I said, keeping it professional. Effective immediately, your position as CEO is terminated. As outlined in the transition clause of your contract and in full compliance with Ohio employment law, you'll get 2 weeks severance and the usual benefits. Your company property, laptop, phone, access credentials, will be collected by end of day. I slid the letter over to him. Security will escort you out when we're done. Silence. Nobody moved. Trent looked down at the letter like it might bite him. Around the table, people glanced at each other, some shocked, some relieved. Then Trent looked up at me. Really? He asked. For the first time since I'd met him, he actually looked scared. You did this because I fired you, he said, jaw tight. No, I said, still calm. I did this because you ran the company into the ground. I fired you because you're bad at your job. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He scanned the room, searching for backup, but nobody would meet his eyes. Finally, he grabbed the letter, crumpled it, and walked out. Right before he left, he turned and said, "You'll regret this." I just watched him go. Door shut behind him, and the room stayed frozen a moment longer. Then Harold cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "I suppose we should discuss the transition plan." I nodded. "We should. But first, I want everyone to understand something. I didn't buy this company to settle a score. I bought it because I know how to fix it. That's what we're going to do." For the next hour, I laid it all out. Operational restructuring, client recovery, talent retention. Everything Trent should have done but never did. By the end, people were asking questions, taking notes, actually engaging. For the first time in a year, the room felt like it had some direction. As everyone filed out, Harold pulled me aside. "That was one hell of an entrance," he said. "It needed to be clear," I told him. He nodded. "You know people are going to talk about why you really did this." "Let them talk," I said. "The results will speak for themselves." And they did. The first 90 days were everything. You don't get much time to show you're not just another problem. You have to be the answer. I didn't waste a second. First thing I did was call the 2 clients we'd lost. I knew both CEOs from my years running ops. I called myself. "No middleman, no sugarcoating. This is Peter Dillard," I said on the first call. "I'm back at Helix and I want to understand what went wrong." There was a pause, then a surprised laugh. "Peter, I heard you got pushed out." "I did," I said. "Now I own the company and I want to fix what broke." That got his attention. We talked for 40 minutes. He walked me through every missed deadline, every breakdown, every screw-up since I left. It was a mess, worse than I thought. But I could fix it. "Give me 90 days, I told him. "Let me prove we're not just talking a big game. If I can't pull this off, you don't owe me a thing." He agreed. We took on a small trial project, tight deadline, limited scope, a real test. We finished it in 70 days, under budget, and better than they'd hoped. The contract came back. It wasn't everything we wanted, but it was enough to start rebuilding trust. The second client? Pretty much the same story. By early January 2025, both relationships were back on solid ground. Over the next 6 months, we clawed back almost 40% of the contracts we'd lost when Trent was running things. Inside the company, I focused on stabilizing. I reversed some of Trent's worst cuts, bringing back the people who actually made a difference, the folks who really knew our systems and could teach others. I didn't rehire everyone, just the ones who mattered. Leadership needed some work too. I didn't shake things up for the sake of it, but I did promote 2 mid-level managers who'd been passed over too many times. I cleaned up the reporting structure to cut out the pointless bureaucracy. I started weekly operational reviews, not to breathe down anyone's neck, but to spot problems early. People noticed. Morale started to pick up. Nothing changed overnight, but you could feel the tension start to fade out of the office. By March, revenue was moving up, not in huge leaps, but steady and real. We started winning contracts again, hanging on to clients we used to lose. Employee turnover dropped by 40%. The board saw it. Harold pulled me aside after one of those quarterly meetings. "I'll be honest," he told me. "I wasn't sure about any of this. Thought maybe you were just out for payback. Turns out you know what you're doing." "That was the plan," I said. He gave me a look. "What about Trent?" he asked. "Heard anything?" I hadn't been keeping tabs on Trent. Didn't really care, but curiosity got to me. I checked his profile later that week. He'd landed at a tech startup in San Francisco, something in logistics. He lasted 3 months before they let him go. After that, his LinkedIn went silent. No updates. His reputation hadn't survived what he'd done at Helix. When you burn through companies like that, word gets around. References matter, and patterns like his don't stay secret for long. I didn't feel any satisfaction over it. I just noticed and kept moving. My focus was Helix, not Trent's next move. By September 2025, a year after I took over, we were profitable again. Not just limping along, but actually growing. We beat our annual revenue target by 12%. The board was happy, investors were happy, the staff was happy. I stayed involved, but let my exec team run their departments. I didn't need to sign off on every little thing. My job was strategy, big clients, long-term plans. The whole culture shifted. People stopped worrying about office politics or looking over their shoulders. They focused on results, on real collaboration. That's what happens when leadership actually leads. Then, in October, I got a call from an old colleague, David Parsons. He'd been one of our best project managers, left right after I got fired. "Peter," he said, "I heard you bought the company. Is it true?" "Yeah, it's true. And I heard you're hiring." We talked for an hour. He'd gone to a competitor but wasn't happy. The grass wasn't greener. He wanted to come back. I brought him in, not just because I needed him, but because he was good, and because his return was proof that Helix was finally worth coming back to. Over the next few weeks, 3 more former employees reached out. People who'd bailed during Trent's time, people who heard things had changed. I didn't bring them all back, just the ones who really fit. Our reputation was shifting. We started popping up in trade journals, not as a cautionary tale, but as a comeback story. How Helix Dynamics pulled off a turnaround. That kind of headline. I didn't chase the press, but I didn't hide from it either. And honestly, the story wasn't complicated. Good leadership matters. Experience matters. Stability matters. We were gearing up to expand too. Planning a new satellite office in Austin for early next year. Hired 15 new people just in the last quarter. We were about to launch 2 brand new service lines, both building on what we already did best. Sometimes, I still thought about the day Trent fired me in front of everyone. The humiliation, the anger, all the uncertainty. But not with bitterness anymore. That part was over. I see that moment as a real turning point. The one that finally made me stop chasing other people's approval and start building something I could actually control. Would I have rather stayed at Helix and skipped all of this? Sure, that would have been easier, but that's not how things played out. What I got was a shot in the dark. A lottery ticket, a company on the ropes, and a chance to prove to myself that skill beats ego every time. One afternoon, I was walking through the office and past the main conference room, the same room where Trent fired me. Same table, same chairs. I stopped and glanced in. There was a meeting going on. My VP of operations was up front, running through the quarterly update. People were actually paying attention, tossing out questions, sharing ideas. It looked like a healthy company, because it was. I kept walking. Not long ago, I got an email from Harold. He was stepping down from the board. Age catches up to everybody, but wanted to grab coffee before his last meeting. We met at a small place downtown, quiet, tucked in the corner. "You've done something impressive here," Harold told me. "I've been on a lot of boards, seen a lot of turnarounds. This one stands out." "Thanks," I said. He stirred his coffee and looked at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. When you bought the company, was it really about fixing it, or was it about Trent?" I've heard this one before, from employees, investors, a few people who know the whole story. My answer is always the same. It was both. I'm not going to act like firing him wasn't satisfying. It was. But if that's all I'd wanted, I could have done it way cheaper and with less hassle. I bought Helix because I knew it could work. I knew what it needed. Firing Trent was just step 1. Harold nodded. "That's what I figured. You're a pragmatist." "I try." We finished our coffee talking about normal stuff. His grandkids, retirement, the kind of life you build after work. As we left, he shook my hand. "You turned a bad situation into a good outcome. That's rare. Most people just stay bitter. Bitterness doesn't build companies," I said. He smiled. "No, it doesn't." Just last month, 22 months after I got fired, the company hit a milestone. We doubled revenue since I took over. Retention was among the best in the industry. Clients were happy. Satisfaction scores sat in the high 90s. Suddenly, Helix became a case study. Business schools wanted to profile us. I turned most of them down. I wasn't trying to be anybody's symbol. I just wanted to run a good company. I did say yes to one interview, a small podcast focused on operational leadership. They wanted to know what makes a company sink or swim. The host asked the obvious question. "You were fired from Helix, then came back and bought it. That's a pretty dramatic arc. How does that feel? I paused. Feels like I did my job, the one I should have been able to do in the first place. That's the truth. Not revenge, not vindication, just work. The podcast aired a few weeks ago. I got a handful of emails, some congratulations, some asking about leadership. One stood out. It was from someone who'd worked with Trent before Helix. They wrote about watching him fail upward for years and said it was good to see reality finally catch up. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. Trent's story isn't mine anymore. Honestly, it never really was. He was just the push I needed to take control of my own story instead of letting someone else write it. And that, way more than any title or money, is what matters. These days, Helix Dynamics isn't just stable, it's thriving. We're going up against companies twice our size and winning. Our reputation for reliability and quality stretches past Ohio now. We've got clients in 8 states across the Midwest, and we're still growing. And right now, I'm getting ready to hire a CEO, a sharp woman named Karen Delquar, who used to run ops at a tech firm in Boston. She's exactly what Helix needs. Experienced, strategic, zero interest in ego games. When she's on board, I'll stay on as chairman and majority owner, but I'll let her run the show. That's the whole idea behind building a solid team. You don't have to do it all yourself. Now that the transition's in motion, I've been thinking a lot about legacy. Not mine, really, but the company's. What I'm building here should last long after I'm gone. That's why I'm putting real succession plans in place. I'm looking for future leaders, making sure nobody's indispensable, and setting up systems so the whole thing doesn't fall apart if one person leaves. Good leadership, in my mind, makes itself unnecessary. Yesterday, I was in my office when one of my VPs walked in with some news. A big client had just asked for Helix on a new project. They'd heard about how we turned things around and wanted to work with a company that values stability and competence instead of just flash. That's the reputation we've earned. If I'm honest, I don't regret a thing. Not the tough decisions, not the setbacks, not even the weird twist of luck that got me here. All of it brought me to a place where I have control, purpose, and the satisfaction of building something that actually matters. This isn't about revenge, it's about redemption. Almost 2 years ago, I walked out of Helix Dynamics with nothing but a box of my stuff and a bruised ego. Now, I walk into the same building as the owner, the leader, the one who brought it back to life. I don't need to gloat. The company's success says it all. Trent Lawson tried to write me off. Instead, he set me free. And with that freedom, I built the kind of company he never could. A place that actually works. People ask if I'd do it all again, knowing what I know now. Yeah, I would. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. I learned that competence outlasts arrogance, patience beats impulse, and there's real joy in building something that lasts. The best revenge isn't making someone suffer, it's making them irrelevant. Trent fired me to show off his power. I bought the company to show what real competence looks like. He's just a footnote now. The company isn't. That's the difference between being loud and actually getting things done. Real strength doesn't make a lot of noise. It shows up day after day. I chose to be effective. If you like this story, drop a comment and let me know what you think. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.